Up to today, I'm going to talk to you first through what is the purpose of the personal statement? Like, what is it even about? What goes in it? Like, what are the qualities that colleges are looking for? I'm going to, within like 5-ish minutes, I'm going to be into our main brainstorming exercise, and it's going to take about a half hour. And the purpose of that one is to use some of the most efficient, effective exercises I've ever found in 20 years doing this for helping you come up with lots of ideas. And then I'm going to talk to you about how those ideas can then lead to a personal statement. We'll take a break right around that time. And then we're going to talk about two different structures. Like, how do you take this brainstorm, all these like random ideas and turn them into a thing? Is it, and I'll give you some different options for that. And then I'm going to talk to you about a whole different type of structure, give you the homework assignment. And by that time, we'll be at Q&A. All right, here goes. Let's do it. I'm going to share my screen. I feel excited. Yeah, my check-in is like, I'm feeling, I don't know, energized and like ready. So let's roll. All right. So in this, when you are able to log into this, you don't need to worry about this right now. But when you're able to log into this, you'll see, actually, let me click get started. You'll see sort of like, I'm skipping past a lot of my bio, but you'll see a lot of my stuff about me. But the main thing I want to start with is like the purpose of this personal statement isn't to necessarily impress the reader with like fancy language. This is not an English essay. This is not even a recap of all your accomplishments. Even though you've done awesome things, great, save those for the activities list. What I want to know is what are the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you'll bring with you to a college campus? Okay. You're trying to give information that's not somewhere else in your application. Susan Tree, my colleague, who's a former admission officer, likes to say, this is like you're infusing your personality in your heart in a way that's differentiating you from other students who have the same or similar grades, test scores, these kinds of, profile essentially. And based on my experience doing this and based on lots of conversations with admission officers, what colleges are looking for, if you're a note taker, this is a thing you can take notes on, is like core values, which we're going to get into in just a few minutes, and which is to say, what's most meaningful to you? What do you care about? Insight, which I call so what moments, that shows your ability to think critically, to reflect. Something like vulnerability, and that broadly just means like, is it personal? I don't mean like sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. I'm like, does it feel like I get to know you better? And then craft. Is it clear that you've revised this over several drafts? Not just like, oh, you wrote it in like 20 minutes and then you just submitted it. Okay. So these four things are the things that I'm going to be coming back to throughout this week. And also inside this choose your own adventure tool, you'll see these four qualities referenced. Okay. How do you do this? That's what we're going to spend this week talking about. All right. You've already downloaded the workbook, but here's another link to do that once you're inside this. A question that I sometimes ask students at the start is, have you faced challenges in your life or not so much? Now, later after the break, we're going to talk about, okay, if you face challenges, how might you structure your essay? But for now, we're going to start with what's called the montage path, and I'll explain what that is in just a second. But a montage is broadly, I'll just give you the broad definition, an essay structure that anybody can use. You don't have to write your essay about challenges. It's basically a way of bringing your skills, qualities, values, and interests into your college essay. So what I'm doing is I'm jumping into, actually, I'm just going to go to brainstorming your content. I'm going to come back to the montage in just a little bit. So where it says, actually, let me just jump to the workbook, the one that you already have. Okay. Last chance, if you're joining us late, we've got a workbook, not last chance, but Alex will share it in the chat. When you click one of these links, what's going to pop up is this student workbook. So I want everybody here right now because I want to get into, because I promised I would at the 10-minute mark, and here we are. I want to get into the brainstorming. Okay. This cool table of contents, whenever you click it, it zooms down. So go ahead and start here at the top with the values exercise. So before I jump in, I want to take a breath, take a pause, and allow you to just, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I want to allow you to just literally close the tabs. Like close other tabs, turn off your phone, because this 30 minutes is maybe the most important 30 minutes of this whole week. Not like in your life, I'm not going to be that presumptuous, but in terms of the quality of the content that I want to share with you, because this is where we start to generate ideas, and it's the quality of these ideas that can shape your essay and in fact shape the trajectory for your application. So let's take a second, close some tabs, turn off your phone for reals, for reals. Let's take a deep breath. and out. One more, and out, and last one. All right. There was a practical goal there too. Some people were kind of like still closing things. So, all right, here we go. Let the brainstorming begin. Now, go with me on this. What I mean by this is like just try these things, and then I'm going to start to weave them together and help them make sense in about a half hour. Okay. So, this is the values exercise. It's pretty simple. What I want you to do is I'm going to set a little timer for 2 minutes, and I want you to highlight in bold, just bold, your top 10 values on your own workbook. Okay. So for example, I might be like, I mentioned creativity was a big one for me. So I just be like creativity. Another one that's important for me right now is productivity. I want to be really productive with you guys, etc. So just pick your top 10. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Go. Just joining us. We're picking our top 10 values from this list. If something that you really care about isn't listed, you can just type it in. Ooh, that is too loud. All right, sorry. All right. So once you've got your top 10, I want you to underline your top five. So of these values, what are your top five? So let's assume that I'm just going to say, let's say I picked these 10. I don't know if that's 10. Then just underline what are your top five? And you got, I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to do this. All right. And now, God, I got to turn that down. Of your top five, I want you to italicize your top three values. And you've only got, I don't know, 15 seconds. I'm not trying to stress you out, just trying to keep the pace moving. So what are your top three? Bold your top 10, underline your top five, italicize your top three. All right. So what I want you to know, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second, is that these values are probably going to make their way in somewhere into your application. It could be that they end up in your personal statement, which is what we're focused on today for the next hour. But it could be that these values end up elsewhere in your application, in your activities list, in your supplemental essays, which are like the additional essays that you'll need to write besides this main college essay. Because students are sometimes like, what do you mean by college essay? I'll just say, what I'm talking about when I say college essay is what I mean when I say personal statement or your essay. And that's this 650 word personal statement that you're going to submit. Probably if you're applying to private schools, probably to like you'll write one school that will go to many different schools. And you'll usually, most students will apply through the Common App, though there are other applications. We can talk about that during Q&A, but we're talking about your main college essay. It's going to be about a page long. Okay. All right. Back to this. All right, I want to walk you through some of the most efficient exercises I've ever seen for helping you brainstorm a lot of ideas. The first one is called I love, and that's kind of two parts. The first part is called I love. And I want you to do this by spending a minute making a random list of things that you love. So, for example, if I was doing this exercise live in front of you right now, I might say, let's say I'm typing, and I would type, I love games. I love road trips. I love snacks. I love deep breaths. I love playing pickleball. I love making people laugh. I love the color blue on the Google Doc. Like there's like a little anonymous buffalo. I love that color blue. I love random ideas. I love random conversations that go late into the night, etc. Okay. So that wasn't a minute, but I'm gonna have you go for a minute. So I want you to make a list, like I said, of random things that you love. Don't think about this too much. Quantity is as important as quality. All right. So just list random things as they come to your brain. What do you love for 1 minute? Three, two, one, go. And type it on your Google Doc. Like just delete this and just type. All right, time's up. Now I want you to make a list, random make a list of things that you know a lot about or could geek out on. Or like if you were in a social situation and you met somebody who liked this thing, you would be like, oh, we should talk. So here are some things that I know a lot about, like college essays and snacks and growing up bilingual, facilitation. So what are some things that you know a lot about? I'm actually going to give you a minute and a half for this one. So make a list of random things that you know. Three, two, one, go. if you've done this exercise before, do it again because usually folks come up with different stuff. All right. Time's up on this one. All right. Next exercise. I'm going to scroll down. This one's called the essence objects exercise. And if you've done this one before, do it again. I find that I come up with something new every time I do it. I want you to spend, I say 5 minutes, we're going to spend like 2.5 minutes today, making a list of what I call essence objects. So essence objects are, as it says here, tangible things that represent memories, moments, relationships, values, basically stuff that's important to you. So, for example, what's an object that reminds you of home? Okay, what's an object that reminds me of home? Um, North Carolina sportswear reminds me of growing up in Asheville, North Carolina. Another object that reminds me of home is like friendship bracelets because I used to like wear those a lot when I lived in Ecuador growing up. And then I could go down. What object makes you feel safe? Nothing comes to mind. Skip. What's a food that reminds you of your family? Ooh, okay. I've got a lot. So I would list foods that remind me of my family. Each one of these represents like a story, a moment, a memory, something. And again, we're trying to make it tangible, but it doesn't have to be like you can touch it because it could be something that's like, what are you proud of? It could be that you're really proud of winning the fourth grade spelling bee, but you're like, oh, I don't know. I can't remember if we won an award or not, but it would be like the award for my fourth grade spelling bee. It's okay if it doesn't like literally physically exist in your life. And for these, what action or gesture represents love to you? Then maybe there's not an object that represents love to you, but maybe it's sort of like the image of someone getting back to me via text. By the way, that super represents love to me. People getting back to me. And that's not like an object. It's just like, I don't know, an image of somebody texting me back, like the three dots on the iPhone. Okay. So I want you to spend, again, I'm starting the timer, 2.5 minutes. And I want you to see if you can come up with 20 different essence objects. And you can just use these questions if you want and just type next to them and go. And you don't have to use these questions. It could just be objects that come to mind. Again, feel free to jump around here if some of these questions don't resonate with you. And by the way, counselors, teachers, parents watching this, I encourage you to do these too. They're kind of fun and it helps you give examples later. And it's more interesting than, I don't know, just watching, I think. All right, cool. So what you'll probably notice is that you're like, it's not enough time. And that's kind of by design. What I wanted to do is give you like half-hour brainstorm with all these exercises. And hopefully you're seeing that, oh, I could probably go back to these and do more. Great. that's part of your homework if you want to, is to go back to these exercises and like keep going. Because sometimes I find that if even if you spend like 3 or 4 more minutes, that you can sometimes generate even more stuff. So noting, pinning for the post game. If you want to go back and do more, great. But for now, let's move on to the random questions. So I'm gonna do another, let's do 2.5 minutes for this one as well. I'm saying 3 to 5 here, but you can come back and spend more time later. But I want you to just jump around and answer some of these questions. My favorite one of these that I think can be most useful in helping you come up with content for your personal statement, your college application is this one. What is or what is your actual superpower or what are your actual superpowers? So for example, you can actually look at your values list for this. One of my superpowers is being able to invent and change things on the spot. You could call that flexibility, adaptability, but I actually think that's creativity. I actually think one of my superpowers is quick thinking. I have to actually slow down in these sessions because my brain goes. Um, Another superpower that I have is, let's see, I think you get the idea. Listening. I'm really good at listening with my whole body, like not just like hearing what someone says, but I'm also good at listening to what they're not saying. And then I feel like one of my superpowers is courageous. Like I'm able to ask questions to like get clarity on, is that what you meant? And I think that's part of listening as well. Okay. So I want you to spend, now that I've said all this, I'll start the timer. A couple minutes answering first, what is or what are your actual superpowers? And then just make notes on any of these that look interesting to you. All right. I'm going to move us along. Next is what I'll call the career question or career brainstorm. Some of you have a really clear sense of what you want to be or do in the future or study. If so, just write it at the top right here. Just delete mine again. And then underneath whatever the thing is that you want to do or be, write some values that you feel like you would need to possess in order to excel in that career, in that position, in that major. So for example, entrepreneur. And what I'm doing is I basically just went up to the values list. You don't need to pick the same values. Let me say this again. You don't need to pick the same values you've already picked. Just use this as a menu for thinking about, okay, the ideal, for example, chef would need to be a good communicator. They would probably be productive. They would probably be interested in hunger, etc. Okay. So for whatever that career is, and even if you're not sure, if you're like, oh, I've always thought it would be cool to do this, it can be fun to sort of brainstorm because you can like look at the values and find other values that you're interested in. We're only going to spend about a minute and a half on this one. If you're like, I have no idea, Ethan, honestly, then great. Just spend the minute and a half answering one or two more of these random questions. Okay. So again, just to clarify, pick a career or a placeholder career, and then what are the qualities that would make you great in that particular career? And if there are a couple, you can list two. In fact, see if you can find the overlaps for those two. That's advanced, but it's useful. Again, if you're not sure. Oh, by the way, see if you can come up with a couple of strange ones. Like there might be some obvious values connected to your career. See if you can come up with ones that are like, oh, here's like my secret sauce values, because these are the things that would really set me apart if I was in that career. In fact, let's do that. Everybody who's doing this, try to like come up with some weird ones. So like for entrepreneur, you might think of like efficiency because they have to work hard and an entrepreneur is going to be curious, coming up with new ideas, but like something that might be a little bit more uncommon for an entrepreneur might be something like nature. So entrepreneurs often work hard. It's important for them to practice self-care. For me, that means getting out in nature. So you might not be like entrepreneur nature, what? And then once I explain it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So see if you can come up with like one or two kind of more uncommon connections. Like if you were interviewing for a job and there were 100 other people who also wanted that job and they're saying all the same things, what would you be like, oh, but I'm also interested in this, and that might set you apart a little bit. You'll notice that some of the stuff starts to overlap that you've been writing from above. That's not a bad thing. That starts to help you see the patterns and recognize overlaps. That's part of why I do so many different exercises here. Okay, moving on. Number five, identity. So, what are some different ways that you identify? There are so many ways to think about identity, and we're going to take a really broad sense of it. So, not just like, I am a human, I am a student, but like, what are some ways that you identify based on, well, actually, let me just give you a big list. Here, scroll down. Race, identity, or sorry, heritage, culture, ethnicity, where you were born, languages that you use. So I'm just going to let you we're going to spend like 2.5 minutes on this one. And I want you to come up with as many different identities as you can think of and just type them in here. Go. If you just keep scrolling down, you'll find this chart. It's in the workbook. Uh, I think you're right, Sam. This might be a different identities table. Just there's so you might not have the table in your workbook. We'll fix that today. Just type identities. Just a side note, Alex, it might be good to update the workbooks that are listed, links for the afternoon session with this workbook. I'll send it to you. I'm in the workbook that's inside the, the tool. By the way, if anybody's like, I really want this table, this is cool. It's inside the tool. If you just go to like the choose your own adventure tool in the top right corner, click workbook, that's where you'll find this table. The reason we didn't give that link to everybody is when like 1,000 people get on that link, it's just it crashes the Google Doc. So that's why we put them separate. I'm going to spend another half minute here because there's a lot that could potentially go here. And yes, you can mention being a Swiftie. I want you to think about your many, many identities, you know. And yeah, some of you are mentioning you're not finding the chart. It's because it's a different version of it, but you can just type it if you like. Like just type the answers to the identities. Okay, next one. Two more. And then I'm going to talk to you about how this turns into an essay. All right. Where do you find yourself at home? Like, what are the places you feel like yourself? Where do you find flow? So it could be like when you're in the kitchen and you're like throwing out the recipe and trying something new. It could be when you're, I don't know, on the, at the game table when you're like me, playing games with your brothers, as I did last night. It could be when you're presenting to a room full of people, when you're on stage. Where are those places where time just disappears? Name as many as you can think of. Or if you're like, that's hard. I don't know where I feel at home. Then just write for a minute and a half, 90 seconds about why it's hard for you to define home. And see if you can name a few different places that you find yourself at home. All right. Last one. I want you to identify some of your islands of personality. What do I mean by islands of personality? Well, if you're like me, by the way, Inside Out is coming out like next week. This is from Inside Out 2, Inside Out 1. There's this moment in the movie. I'm not going to play the clip right now because YouTube flags it because it's like a Pixar clip, but you can click it there in your workbook. Um, so islands of personality are basically just different sides of you. So in the movie, Joy, the main character, talks about how Riley has like Hockey Island because she loves to play hockey, and Friendship Island because she's really close with her friend who she ends up being separated from, and Family Island. So for you, and you might, this is sort of like this is zooming back and thinking about all the stuff that you brainstormed so far. What are some different sides of you? Like for me, for example, Games Island. You notice there's like board games behind me. I've mentioned them like two or three times already. That's like one side of me, the part that really loves, games, gamifying things. I've also got the role, the identity that I'm playing right now is like college essay guy or teacher or counselor. But I'm not just that. I also write and I, create content on YouTube and I have a podcast. So that's like another kind of side of me that I'm not quite into right now, that I'm not really embodying. I've also got like the dad side of me. I have like a 9-year-old daughter, and like that's a separate side of my life. So scroll back through and be like, okay, what are the different sides of who I am, my islands of personality, and see if you can come up with like 4 to 7. And this is kind of intentionally ambiguous. If you're like, I don't quite know what he means, that's kind of part of the thing of this. The different sides of you is broadly speaking what I'm talking about. That you would probably want to show in your application. And if some of you who are like, I've already written an essay draft, I still want you to do this and think about what are the different sides of me that I would want to show in my application, even besides this, whatever you've written for your personal statement draft. All right, cool. So this is the leave the timer go. All right. So what we've just done is we've brainstormed a whole bunch of stuff. So just to recap, you've now got a whole bunch of random things, moments, memories, facts, experiences. And like I said, if you want to go back at some point and go through those, great. But what we're trying to look for are 2 things. When it comes to writing a college essay, whoa, look at that. That was nice. Surprise. Yay, congratulations. You made it for the first part of the brainstorming. Um, so what we're looking for when we're writing a college essay is you need like, first of all, some stuff to write about, which is some of what you've been brainstorming. But we also need what I call a thematic thread, or sometimes call it a focusing lens. Something, because you can't talk about every single part of your life. You need something that's going to help connect some of the different parts of you. So let me give you an analogy. I'm going to show you this inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. So we're writing what we're brainstorming what's called a montage essay. And a montage is a series of seemingly unrelated events or moments that when you combine them and you connect them with some kind of theme, we go, ah, this all makes sense. And in the context of the college essay, it somehow reveals your skills, qualities, values, and interests. Okay. So if you think about Pixar movies, there's a scene where Bob is like trying to get back into shape. And there are all these separate moments, memories, but the theme is getting into shape. Okay. So again, we need skills, qualities, values, and interests, which you've started to brainstorm in this half hour. And we need the thematic thread, the thing to connect all the stuff. Kind of think of it like a bead with threads. Sorry, thread with beads. I guess it could be a bead with threads, but that would be kind of harder. So it's a thread that connects all these different, each bead represents some different side of you or some different thing that you want to show. Okay. Now, when it comes to trying to figure out which topic to choose, what you'll see inside this Choose Your Own Adventure tool is that these things that we've just brainstormed could actually turn into like cool personal statement topics. And inside this tool, you'll see 7 different methods for writing a personal statement. So for example, we have the I love, I know method. Some, past students that I've known or worked with that have taken my courses have chosen something like animals, something that the student knew a lot about, and have used animals to connect to different sides of themselves. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. Or another student wrote about knitting and her love of knitting. And another student wrote about meditation and how meditation had helped shape him in all these cool ways. But that's not the only way to write a personal statement. It could be that you end up choosing a series of objects and write about, in this case, the student wrote about the stuff in his room. And each object represented some different side of who he was. Okay. So there are all these different paths. You can kind of see it on the side. It could be that you write about a skill or a superpower. Maybe your common thread or theme is your career, the thing that you want to do in the future. Maybe the thing that connects everything is an identity that's really important to you. So what you'll see here is like examples of 7 different types of personal statements. So for example, one student wrote about their introversion, like, and that how their introversion had shaped them in a bunch of different ways. What we're looking for here is when it comes to picking a topic, is we're looking for something that is, if possible, I'll give you 2 qualities. Elastic, which is to say something that you can connect to lots of different examples, moments, values, something that you might know a lot about, and then something that's hopefully somewhat uncommon. And by uncommon, I mean it's something that's not like a typical extracurricular activity. So for example, if you wrote about a common sport like football or, debate or something like that, that might be more likely to blend in. Okay. So if you look at this on a graph, the more uncommon and more elastic your essay is, the more likely it is to stand out and the more likely it is to tell a lot about you. Okay. If your topic is very common, like let's say football, and it's not elastic, which is to say you can't connect it to many different sides of yourself, chances are it might blend in a little bit more and might reveal less about you. So that's kind of what we're going for here. And there are so many different ways to do this. But for now, just for the purpose of today, I want you to sort of take any sort of like common extracurricular activity, even if you spend a lot of time doing it, and not make it like your main topic, at least for today's brainstorm. Just know that there's probably some way that you can maybe weave that topic into your personal statement by connecting it to a particular value. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second. So here's what let's do. I want you to take just as an exercise here, because I want this shows you how to brainstorm, how to turn the actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's take a 3-minute break. And then when we come back, I'm going to show you how we take all this stuff, and find an awesome topic. And I'll talk more about what makes a great topic. All right. So it's 49 past by the time I finish saying this. It's going to be 50 past the hour. Let's come back in 3 minutes, take a quick bio break. I'll see you at 53 past, and I'll show you how this turns into an essay topic. All right. See you in 3. All right, we're back. All right. So how do you take all of this and turn it into an actual topic? When you zoom down on your workbook, you'll see this thing that looks kind of weirdly like a jellyfish. So this is what I call the jellyfish exercise. So here's how it works. If you want, grab a piece of paper and a pen. If you feel like writing, drawing, great. If not, you can just do this by typing. But what I want you to do is I want you to pick something that, let's say that you love or know a lot about. So in this case, this student picked research. You put it at the top. And then underneath it, I want you to name some values that you could connect to whatever your potential topic is. So, for example, research could connect to leadership in this student's experience. They're like, oh, I learned a lot about leadership through my research experience. Or leadership or research is also talking about community, about bringing people together around a common idea or a common aim, etc. And see if you can list, what did the student list? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a lot. That's 10, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. See if you can come up with like at least 5 to 7 different values that you could connect to your particular potential topic, whatever it is. And what we're doing is we're testing here for elasticity. So by elastic, what I mean is it's something that's stretchy enough that you can connect it to lots of different things. Probably that will mean you'll connect it to lots of different things you care about and lots of different sides of you that you're going to contribute to a college campus. We're also hopefully looking for something that's a little bit more uncommon. So many students will write about violin, piano, and common instruments. So just for the moment, even let's say if your extracurricular activity is very uncommon, great. But let's for the moment try and pick something that is not a common extracurricular activity, just for the sake of brainstorming. And I'm going to give you like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes here. And I want you to try and connect it to, I don't know, like 5 different values. If you can do more, great. And even if you've already written an essay or you're a student, parent, counselor watching, try this too. It's kind of fun. And if you've done this before, try it again. This is also mind mapping for some of you who are like, this kind of seems like a mind map. Yeah. One of the things that we'll do during the Q&A at the end is we'll talk about common or uncommon topics. But for now, if you're not sure, if you think that it might be common, pick something else just for a simple exercise, just for today. And if this little image isn't appearing, don't worry. If it's not in your doc, oops, sorry, I need to put more time on that. Just type it anywhere in your Google Doc. We'll make sure to get that updated for the next session. Someone's asking about challenges. We're going to talk about challenges in about 7 or 8 minutes. So stand by. If you've already made a jellyfish now, I want you to make one more. So in other words, find something else that you love or know a lot about and see if you can connect it to different values. So what we're doing, in case you're just back from the break, we're creating these little jellyfish. And this is not maybe going to be in your workbook, but essentially pick something that you love or know a lot about and connect it to at least five values. And if you've already done one, you're doing another one right now. Okay. So this is going to connect to your homework. What I'm going to have you do is I want you to try and find a couple of these topics, or in this case, I love, I know things, and see if you can connect it to different values. And what you'll see inside the tool is how then, once you've got some kind of idea, you'll see how it turns into an actual essay. So this example essay isn't the student who wrote about animals. And what you'll see in his animals essay, I'm not going to read it to you right now, is that he connects it to different values. So he talks about these certain animals of like these quail that taught him the value of patience. And then in his essay, he's not like only talking about quail the whole time. He's talking about how the experience of checking the water levels and making sure the temperature was okay actually connected to other areas of his life. For example, when he's working in crew, which is like rowing, it takes time to help for eight people to learn to work in perfect unison. And so what he is describing here is actually not all about quail, but it's about how he's learned this value of patience and he's applied it elsewhere in his life. Okay. And then he does this in a couple other paragraphs where he talks about this lamb that taught him about trust. But it's not all about the lamb. Trust is a quality that's been really important in his life. And he's been able to apply it in other areas, like when he's helping students, when he's, doing, we're helping like peer counseling, essentially. So, and then he gives some more examples. So my point here is that if this were a jellyfish, it wouldn't be research and stuff, it'd be animals. And then underneath this, it would be like patience and trust and those kinds of things. You feel me? That's kind of how you kind of brainstorm the big chunks of it. Now, what you'll see inside the tool is an analysis of how this student was able to bring in insights and show vulnerability and craft. And then underneath it, you'll see another essay. Because animals, you're like, okay, that's still a little bit of an uncommon essay. I can't really write that one. But then you'll see an example of a more common topic, like food. And in this case, the student uses a similar structure where they basically brainstormed by putting food here at the top and then give me some different values. But the challenge with something like food, because it's more common, is that you're going to want to come up with values that might be a little bit more surprising or uncommon when it comes to your topic. So again, you can read it later. But this essay, he talks food shows his determination in this particular way that he wrote about it. Food also, he's able to connect it to vulnerability in his description of his family and challenges that they've been through. This student went through a bunch of divorces, I think 3 or 4 divorces in his family. So he talks about how food is a way that brings them together despite all the difficulties. He also talks about how food represents his ability, interest in trying new things. So one important thing that I want to say to you is that I don't want you to come away from the session feeling like you can't write about something that's common. Like someone mentioned rugby. Rugby is not super common. It's a little bit more uncommon. But if you're going to choose a common topic, you're going to want to make some more uncommon values connections. And I'm going to talk more about that on Wednesday. But for now, I want to urge you to see if you can come up with something that might be a little bit more uncommon. Okay. What you'll see in this first part of this is the first part of the homework, is that once you have something picked and you've done I love or I know, you can try to connect it to at least 5 values in 2 minutes, which is what we just did. And then the next step, and this is what I'm going to suggest you do for homework, is to try to come up with examples for your topic. So let's say, for example, you were writing about research and leadership was a value. Okay, what's an example of how you learned leadership through research? And then maybe what's an example of how leadership manifests in your life? Okay. And that you're not going to do that right now, but that's what I'm kind of like encouraging you to do for homework, because this will start to lead to an outline. And you're going to take all of your examples and you're going to connect it to a different value. Now, some students will do this the other way around. Some students will be like, I don't know what values I want to show for research, but I want to talk about this experience I had when we had this aha moment with my team and we realized this particular thing. Cool. So like the example was when we realized this, we had this awesome experience. And then you might think, okay, well, what value does that represent? So you can kind of, you basically what we're looking for is values and examples and values underneath the larger topic of whatever the thing is that you want to write about. Okay. Now, that's if you just choose the I love, I know path. But based on your brainstorm, it could be that you're kind of vibing with one of these other approaches. So maybe you come down here to the essence objects one and you're like, that sounds kind of interesting. And I've got some cool objects that I want to like write about. So maybe you read this essay and you're like, whoa, this student, who by the way ended up at a selective school, they're just writing about the stuff in their room. And like, it's so deep and specific and it's really cool. And maybe you're like, I want to just choose like different objects and connect it to different sides of myself. Now, if you do decide to do that, you need something that connects them all. In this case, the thing that connected all of his objects were they all happened to live on his desk. And that's what, it could be that you, for example, look at your bookshelf and you're like, I want to write about different books on my bookshelf and how each one connects to a different side of me. Awesome. And in that case, you would read through this Essence Objects My Room section. You'll see the values and the little analysis. And then I would say also read the second example. So in this case, the student was like, I want to write about my laptop stickers because I think that's really creative. And each sticker shows a different side of me. And then again, I'm kind of fast forwarding to your homework, but what your homework is going to be to go inside your workbook and create a mini outline. And what the mini outline is going to look like, and I use this example from the laptop stickers, is I want you to write what is the structure that you're considering. And right now, so far, we've only been talking about montage. We're going to talk about another one in just like 2 minutes. And what is your potential topic? So laptop stickers is my potential topic. Great. What are the different values that you want to show? I want to show my creativity and my open-mindedness, etc. Okay, great. If you're going to show your creativity, how do you show it? Well, I have this We Heart Design sticker. How do you show your open-mindedness? I have this sticker that says common threads. So the example is like the thing that shows the real thing, right? Like the underlying quality that you want to demonstrate. And again, you can totally brainstorm examples first if you want. And then think about, okay, I'm going to be talking about these stickers. What does each of these stickers represent in my life? Because this is what colleges really care about. Take a look at this column. Colleges really want to know, again, those values, skills, qualities, those interests that you're going to bring with you to a college campus. This is not a laptop stickers essay. It's an essay about you that happens to be through the lens of laptop stickers. And what I'm saying there is kind of confusing, but it's like, I don't want you to tell me about all the details of everything about your laptop, because then it's like, well, that's an essay about a laptop. You're just using it as a vehicle to talk to me about different experiences you've had that have led you to develop these awesome values, these qualities. Okay, so that when I'm looking at your essay in committee and I'm trying to explain to other people why I should let you into my institution, I'm like, this student's so creative and they're funny and they're courageous and all those things. Okay. The other paths here are all repeat. So what you've got for each of these paths on the left side, and if you can't see this, just broaden your screen when you get inside the tool. And if you can't get inside the tool, stand by. We'll follow up in the email and you'll make sure that you can get inside. But it could be that you choose a skill or a superpower. Okay. And each one of these little modules walks you through, what do I mean by skill or superpower? Well, here are some common examples like mentoring, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier. Teaching, that's a pretty common one. A more uncommon skill or superpower might be like, giving presents. Like your essay could be a series of like presents that you've given and why each one was meaningful to you. Or translating. Like I translate in so many different ways. I translate not only for my parents, but I translate code when I'm trying to do this thing. And I translate for the people that I work with when I'm at my summer job. And not always language, but it could be translating in the broad sense. It could be that you end up writing an essay about a career. And again, You'll see examples from past students. You'll see sample essays with analysis. So I would read through these. And then at the end, you'll see a little walkthrough of how to start turning this into an outline. Okay. The cool thing about the identities method is that you can pick one identity if you want, like Bahraini identity, or you could pick multiple different ways that you identify. Like in this case, the student's essay begins, my social media profile reads angry brown girl, feminist, singer, meme lover. And each one of those is going to be a paragraph in her essay, and it's going to be a different value that she focuses on. And if you're like, gosh, Ethan, I still feel confused. I don't even know what these essays look like. It's because for the sake of time today, I didn't go through a bunch of examples. But if you click at the top here where it says essay examples, you'll see a quick reference guide for all these different types of essays that I'm mentioning. Okay. And they're all on one page here. But this is just like a second place to read them. If you want to read them through here, great. Like if you want to see an identity method essay, just scroll down and you'll see the essay. Home is the other one, where you've got like, I might find myself in one home, like in coffee shops or multiple homes. Okay. So homework is, if you're vibing with this, I want you to finish going through, pick one of these paths and read through the sample essays and see if you're like, oh yeah, I could totally see myself doing that. And then I want you to create a really simple outline based on what it says in this module, module 2, based on whichever of these makes sense to you. Okay. And then I want you to do it again, because I'd love for you to come on Wednesday with 2 or 3 montage ideas, which is to say different topics and different outlines for like how you could maybe, write that essay. So in particular, see this right here? I want you to see if you can come up with an idea for an essay and just put it right here. Put it on your Google Doc. Okay. Now, some of you have been listening very patiently and you're like, Ethan, but what about challenges? What if I do have challenges that I want to write about? Okay. This next 7 minutes is for you. Now, I don't have time to go through the whole brainstorm, but I want to point you to what's called the narrative path. So for those of you who are like, oh, I don't have challenges, still stay tuned because I want you to hear about this structure, because this structure could be potentially useful for maybe another essay. Okay, so in the narrative path, you'll see an exercise here that says beginning. And a narrative, what I'm calling narrative, is like a challenges-based essay, is when you're writing about challenges you faced and how they've impacted you. Then you're writing about what you've done about it. And then you're writing about what you've learned. Now, that structure is a little different from what we've been talking about so far with the montage. Montage is like, here's this topic, and here's how it connects to different sides of me through different values. This one is a little bit more like, this happened, then here's what I did about it, and then here's what I learned. But again, the purpose is the same. You're trying to show skills, qualities, values, and interests that you'll bring to a college campus. Now, when you're trying to decide, here's an exercise that I want you to walk through, and the question that I want you to have in mind is, okay, I've got these cool ideas, maybe from the montage side, but I don't know if I should choose that or a particular challenge that I faced. So there's an exercise here called the feelings and needs exercise, which I'd love for you to work through. And I'm not going to much, let me just play it for a second. You'll see that it's like it says 10 minutes and 50 seconds. It's probably more like I don't know. I'm going to guess, I'm going to put this in the chat just so you have it. But here. So if you face challenges, watch this. If you want to pause it and go slower through it, I would recommend that. It's probably going to take you like 20, 25 minutes to go through if you're like doing it well. And by that, I mean like doing it carefully. But I would say work through this one. By the way, side note, while you're on the YouTube channel, we've got videos that come out every week. So smash that like button. No, if you want to subscribe, great. But it's not obviously required. But there's tons of stuff that we're putting out like every week throughout, basically for the rest of your process. So just a quick side note on that. Okay. Feelings and needs. So once you've done this exercise, click here where it says example and analysis. And then what you'll see underneath this is a sample essay of a student who faced challenges, did some stuff about it, and learned some amazing qualities, ended up getting into a selective school. And it represents probably what many of you are more likely to see is like when you think of like college essay, when it's like more of a challenges-based essay. But I want to emphasize for you all, you do not have to write a challenges-based essay in order to write a good essay. In fact, if given the choice, you might be like, I don't know if these challenges are the best way for me to show my skills, qualities, values, and interests. That's why I started and have spent most of my time on this montage path, because there are like 7 different ways that you can write, montage essay. There are actually more, but I'm trying to keep it to 7 for now. And then for narrative, there's like this challenges-based story, which I'm calling like the 8th way. Okay. What you'll see underneath this is the analysis. So based on the exercise walks you through sort of brainstorming these different things you experienced, and it'll show you like how the elements basically connected to that student's essay. Underneath it, there's a little module here that walks you through what is it that helps an essay stand out. So a challenges-based essay, oftentimes, actually, this is in this doc, which we'll share with you. Let me scroll through this. For narrative essays, I would say it's harder to write about a common challenge, like a move or a divorce, etc. A vague challenge, like growing up is tough, or a challenge that mostly happened to someone else, like your parents, a sibling. Sometimes students want to write about like bad grades. I wouldn't recommend that. I would say put that in your additional information section, which is like, tell us what else you want to know. Not making a sports team, a bad breakup. Those are really hard to do well and stand out with. It's hard to write about mental health challenges. I think that if you want to describe mental health challenges, you can put that in your additional information section and just say, here's the thing I experienced, what I did, what I learned, and then you can write about something else. Someone mentioned writing about Taylor Swift. You could, but if the reader isn't a Swiftie, then they might be like, so that's what I would call also a potentially stigmatized topic, something that someone might have some kind of bias against. Video games is another one. Sometimes readers are like, well, first of all, video games is just a very common topic. So even if you spend a lot of time doing it, I would say put it in your activities list, potentially brainstorm something else, or challenges, stuff that happened a really long time ago, elementary or middle school. If you're like, oh, my challenge falls into one of these, I would say for now, brainstorm montage ideas. So go with what we did in the first part of today and see if you can come up with 2 or 3 ideas that aren't challenges based. That's why, again, I'm spending so much time on montage. What I think a narrative essay that tends to stand out is an essay that was on difficult challenges and had a wow insight moment at the end. Whereas if the challenges were like, I got a bad grade, and the insight was like, I'm going to try and do better next time, that's going to be, I think, harder to stand out. Okay. If you're feeling like, no, Ethan, I've been through some serious challenges, then I want to encourage you again to go to the beginning, go do the example and analysis, like read through that and do that exercise, the feelings and needs exercise that I mentioned. Okay. And then once you've done that, go ahead and go through this how to outline a narrative draft section. So I'm going to email all this to you, but let me just clarify what your homework is, and then I'm going to get into some specifics here. All right, homework. I want you to watch the rest of module 1. So module 1, if you look at this tool, is every see where it says 1 here on the left side. So watch the rest of module 1, which is to say this, and then 2.1, which is outlining. Okay. So 1 and then 2.1, because that's going to set us up for our session on Wednesday, or if you're watching this later, the next session. And I want you to create at least 2, but ideally 3 outlines. Okay. So it could be that you're like totally vibing with a laptop stickers or whatever your thing is. I want you to still come up with another idea. Why? Because it could be that when on Wednesday, when I'm like, I'm going to open it up and be like, pitch ideas to me. And there's a particular way that I'm going to ask you to pitch it. And when you're doing that, if the idea isn't like, if I feel like it's maybe somewhat common, I might be like, great, this could work. What else you got? I want you to have another idea. In fact, I want you to have 2 or 3. If you want, this is kind of looking ahead a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to write a log line. And a log line essentially is a 1 to 3 sentence version of your personal statement. If it's a montage, that's going to name your topic. Like the stickers on my laptop are like a passport that shows where I've been in my life. They represent my creativity, open-mindedness, family, commitment to social justice, and love for entrepreneurship. This is what I'm trying to get you to create next session, is give me a 1 to 3 sentence description that's like, here's the topic, and then here are the different values that I want to show. Okay. If you're writing about challenges, then your log line is going to look a little bit more like this. So we'll put this in. Alex, could we make sure, because I might forget, that we put the log line link in the homework? That would be awesome because I think that's not currently listed in the homework. I'll actually, you know what? I'm just going to do it right now. Bonus points. Let's see. If you know, I'll just say optional. Write a log line, and I'll just link to that. Okay. And then if you want, I would say share your outlines with somebody, counselor, friend, parent, mentor, and pick whatever topic is. Actually, let me put write a log line up here. There we go. And if you're feeling super motivated, you might even write a first draft. Now, next time we meet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review some of your examples live on Wednesday. So if you would like to, don't do this now because you haven't done the homework yet. But once you have done your outline, so like once you've created like 2 or 3 of these, then you can share your essay workbook Google Doc, like the one that you're looking at right now, you with this email address, psbootcamp@collegeessayguide.com. So you just go up to share. Make sure your name and AM session are written at the top, like in the title, because then I know to like focus on this session. And you can hit share and then share it with that address. And I will be reading through those probably Tuesday night. And I will select, I don't know, 3 to 5 of these to sort of go through. And again, oh, sorry, I didn't say this yet, but heads up, if you share, you're giving me permission essentially by sharing them to look at your Google Docs. So don't put anything like really personal in there. Okay. And if you don't want your name in there, you can say anonymous at the top. Okay. But I just wanted you to be able to like find this document later. So yeah, so just make sure that that's cool with you before you share it. Because I'm not able to, I don't have enough time to be able to give everybody feedback. But then I'll walk you through like, okay, cool, here's how this person's making sense. And I'll give you feedback to some of you about like about what, which topics might be. Again, we're looking for something that's elastic and a little bit more uncommon. And then we're going to play a game in our next session called Is This a Good Topic or Not? Where we're all going to write a log line and you're going to put them into the chat. We'll have a system for you to do that. And I'm going to give you feedback on your ideas. Okay. And I will be able to get through many of you, like probably like, I don't know, and lots and lots. I'll say dozens and dozens and dozens of you. I'll be able to give you feedback on your ideas because we're going to do it in this like rapid fire style. Okay. And then what else? That's it. That's your homework for right now. And it's probably going to take you an hour or two, to be honest. If you're feeling motivated right now and you're in flow, stay in this, keep going, because sometimes if you like step away from it or you're too far, it's like you kind of start to like, I don't know. No, it sort of starts to fade a little bit. Or you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do the homework. So if you're feeling in flow, keep going. Okay. We got about 10 minutes. So I want to shift to Q&A and see what's coming up for y'all. And hi, full screen mode. What's up? Sup? All right, let's see what's coming in Q&A. Is women's wrestling considered common? No. How do I answer about a challenge I face without making it seem too much? The key there for the person who asked is the challenge will be the first third of your essay eventually. The what you did about it is going to eventually be the middle third, and then what you've learned is hopefully going to be the final third. So if you're writing about a challenge, and if you end up writing about, let's say for homework, you want to write a draft, I would say just write it however it goes, and write it long. Don't worry about trying to squish it into 650 words, but eventually those challenges and the effects are going to get into the first third because that's really just the setup. And that's how you'll keep it from making it seem like too much. If I'm doing my IB arts exhibition on my my relationship with water bodies, could I have artworks be the object through which I explore myself? That sounds really cool. Yeah. We're kind of playing, is this a good topic or not? Which I'm kind of okay with. Is public speaking common? Yes. Is rowing considered a common sport? Somewhat common, yes. I'm going to get in trouble. What would it, and so for those of you, pause for a second, because other people are going to start asking me, can I write about such and such? For now, if you think your topic might be somewhat common, and by that I mean, if it's an extracurricular activity that other people do, I would suggest brainstorming other possibilities. So for example, I want to ask for the person who is writing about rowing, maybe, well, what identity does that represent to you? Well, my rowing identity represents my leadership identity. Great. Where does that leadership manifest itself elsewhere? Well, I lead in other ways too. So when I'm on the water, I lead in this particular way. but I also lead in this other particular way when I'm in the classroom. So I want you to think about your identities as a leader or whatever that quality is. Maybe it's like when on rowing, I'm not the leader. I'm actually the listener. I'm the supporter. Great. Where does that supporter identity manifest itself elsewhere in your life? So it's more about how you are showing up and less about like me as a rower, because that could be in your, in your, in your activities list. When we're talking about something common versus uncommon, as an international student, should we consider how something is common in America? Uh, yes, sure, yes. So it might be that it's common else, it might be less common in the US. So totally. Would what it means to be human be a good topic? I think it would be a little bit broad. So I would encourage you to come up with something a little bit more specific, maybe connected to some of these different montage paths. If I wanted to have my essay about a specific story from my childhood, but doesn't have exact values, would I be better off choosing a different story? I would recommend choosing a different story. For anybody who's thinking about something that happened a long time ago, I would try to keep your answers or your stories to stuff that happened within the last few years as much as you can. How long are these essays? Around 650 words. That's yeah, not a bad question. Is it important the essay topic lines up with the major you're pursuing? It doesn't have to be. If you want to, great, but it doesn't have to. Should mildly crude humor be avoided in the essay? It kind of depends. You kind of have to build trust with your reader. It really needs to be worth it. But if you're trying to show humor, there are probably other ways to show it that are maybe safer. But I would say write the essay focused on skills, qualities, values, and interests, and then ask yourself, does it need this bit of humor? If not, maybe I could cut it. For montage, can you choose an aspect of yourself, like empathy or personal growth, and talk about times when you've demonstrated it? Yeah, but I want you to get even more specific than that. So, for example, if your main quality is like empathy, is there a version of that? Something that a way that you could say empathy that sounds more broad? Because if you try, or sorry, more specific. Because if you try to write about something broad like empathy, then it's what I would call like a value-based essay, which is really hard to do well because it starts to sound like many other essays. So, for example, okay, I am empathetic would be like a very broad opening line. A more specific opening line, look at the thumbs up, is I am a listener. Okay, that's a little bit more specific because then you could talk about listening in a broad sense. But what's a more specific version of that? I've learned that listening is about so much more than hearing people. Okay, already that's intriguing. For me, listening is about, and what I'm doing is I'm writing a superpowers essay about how listening is about, and I could just list, sorry, I'm kind of brainstorming live, but about how listening, but don't steal this idea. Actually, let me stop. But about listening is about X, Y, Z, and Q. So listening, the superpower, has led to these particular skills, qualities, values. And you would brainstorm a series of moments when listening in some, specific instances have led you to all these different moments and experiences. And each paragraph would be a different listening example, but it's all about how listening has manifested in your life. That would be more specific. There might even be a more specific version of that. Okay. Let's see. For those who are like trying to get access and stuff, don't worry. We'll follow up with email. You'll have all the links. All right. Alex, if you have a moment, if you wouldn't mind in the Q&A, if you could just like um, hit answer live or dismiss for the questions that are about tech stuff, that would be super awesome. Okay. Let's see. Challenges, do they have to be tragic ones? I would say if you haven't experienced a big challenge, focus on a montage, broadly speaking. And if you're focused on some kind of extracurricular activity in your challenge, I would say focus on a montage because oftentimes those challenges that are extracurricular focused are going to work well for supplemental essays, which are going to be essays that are required for other essays that specific colleges will ask you to write. Are there essay concepts or ideas specifically helpful to mention to get into more selective universities? Yes. Everything that I'm talking to you about today and my encouragement to like stay away from common topics will help you get into a more selective university. More to come on that on Wednesday. Is tutoring common? Yes. The homework will be emailed to you. What would I suggest to catch up? Watch the recording. The log line link will be in the homework. Let's see. I'm just trying to, there was a lot of tech questions. Oh, I think Alex is gone. Jasmine, if you're here, if you wouldn't mind maybe going through some of the questions and marking some of them as dismissed. Okay, I'm going to try to find, we've got a couple minutes left, so I want to try to find some questions that are going to apply to a bunch of people. I'll have to write a full personal statement as a draft. Yes, that's like bonus points right now because you probably don't have enough because you haven't outlined it yet. But I want to encourage you to outline first, and then and then by the end of the week, yes, you'll write a draft. Is ADHD a common challenge? It is. I would suggest putting that in your additional information section. We're not going to talk a ton about what goes in the additional information section. If you want to know more about it, just Google additional information college essay guy, and you'll see a complete guide for that. Can I use the narrative to describe a triumph rather than a challenge? You could. I find it a little bit harder to do well and to stand out. So I would suggest maybe try montage, especially if it's kind of new to you, just to kind of see what you can find. Because oftentimes the triumph essays end up being about an extracurricular activity. And I find that extracurricular activities are great for supplemental essays, but sometimes blend in a little bit more than they're a little bit more expected on the personal statement. Let's see. A lot of the questions are, should I write about this? And I'm going to save more of those for Wednesday. Ooh, that one's kind of an interesting one. Yeah, a lot of people are like, is this a good topic or not? I knew I was gonna open up that can by answering a few people. But I'll make sure to cover those. I'll get more into these on Wednesday, I promise. An injury, a good challenge topic. An injury is a very common topic. I would encourage you to consider choosing something that could talk about lots of different sides of you. If you wanted to mention the injury, you could just mention it in 3 sentences in your additional information section. Okay. Pausing for a second because we're at time officially. And I want to just remind you that the homework is all going to be emailed to you, and it'll also have your login and everything. If you go into your email, you'll be able to find your login information. If you can't get in somehow, just like reset your password or check out the FAQ. And the homework will all be there to remind you as well. For those of you who want to stay a few minutes extra, I'll spend an extra 5 minutes here answering some more questions. And yeah, happy writing. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in 48 hours minus 90 minutes. All right, 5 more minutes. Let's see what we got. Is living abroad as a missionary kid or similar? Oh, so these are like, is this a good topic? Do we need to, oh, this is a more broad question. Do we need to mention extracurriculars? You don't need to, but you totally can. What you'll see in the sample essays is you'll see that students talk about their extracurriculars in the context of the values they've developed. So, for example, in the My Desk essay, this one student worked and he was a leader and he was basically learning this value of leading from the battlefield, which is to say he wasn't just like telling people what to do. He was actually getting in there and getting involved with his teammates. And that was a really important insight for him. But he talks about it. First, he talks about leading from the battlefield as like the concept. And then he's like, the example of this is with this particular extracurricular activity I did. So if for those of you who are thinking, oh, Ethan's saying don't write about extracurriculars. No, I'm saying if you choose a common extracurricular activity as your main topic, like at the top of your jellyfish, chances are that's going to blend in more. Then if you choose something else, it's a little more uncommon, and you find a way to mention, just like squeeze in your extracurricular activity through a particular value that you've developed. So for example, and you'll see lots of examples inside the tool, but like, even taking, for example, the animals essay, he's like trying to show this quality of patience, and he happened to learn it from crew rowing, So that'd be an example of that. All right, let's see. If we email our essay, would you look at it and give us individual feedback? I'm not able to say yes to that because if I did, I would get hundreds of emails and have no life this week or this month. So I'm sorry. I'm not able to do that. Ah, this is a great question. And this is a little bit advanced, but can you include a challenge in a montage essay? Yes. One of the things we'll talk about probably on Friday is how do you take a montage idea? So let's say, for example, well, I'll give you an example. The student who wrote the food essay was writing about food and like how it showed him different values. And then one of the paragraphs was mentioning parents' divorce. But it's not an essay about like, let me tell you about my parents' divorce and what I did about it and what I learned. It's more about this value of like vulnerability and connectedness and how that was especially important in light of the divorce, in the aftermath of the divorce. So it's mentioning the challenge. In this case, it's not talking about what he did or what he learned, but it's mentioning it in the context of a montage. So that's something that we'll talk a little bit more about on Friday. Could the laptop stickers essay work for us too? It's become a little bit more common since I, started talking about this in like on these courses, but you could. Does the uniqueness of the values themselves not matter? No. The values are just, they're going to be these broad concepts. It's the application of the values in the context of your topic. That's what makes them uncommon. There isn't necessarily, it's not about like, are the values themselves common or like, is family a common or uncommon value? It's like talking about family in the context of whatever research, it's the connection that you're making. And I'm sorry, pausing for a second. I'm going to pause and well, we're almost at time, but I'm not going to be able to answer any more like is such and such a good topic because I want to, and it's my fault for like answering a few of those. We're going to talk more about that on Wednesday, I promise. Uh, so someone's asking a question that I answered at the very beginning, but some of you may have missed this. What's the main goal of this Common App essay? To demonstrate the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you'll bring with you to a college campus. Okay. Someone's asking about identity essays. Do I think they're overused? Not necessarily. I find that even if colleges, even if I read an essay, I'm like, oh, this is an identities essay, I'm almost always interested in it because the way that different identities overlap is usually different from somebody else's. So you might have one identity in common with somebody else, but chances are you're not, look at the, oh, there are the fireworks. You're not going to have like 5 or 7 identities. So if you describe different identities, chances are that's going to be an uncommon topic. All right. We're at my 5 minutes of what I promised is over. So let me like do one more question. Um, what if you don't have an uncommon topic? Okay, try really hard for the next 48 hours to come up with one. And by the way, there aren't like strictly topics that are like uncommon versus common. Think of this more on a spectrum. And what I'm trying to do is nudge you towards the more uncommon direction with all these exercises. And by the way, go back and do the exercises more, like spend a half hour doing the exercises. If you do end up landing on a common topic, check out the food essay because you'll see how you can, and you just go into the example essays, food, you'll see how you can take a more common topic like food and connect it to different moments, experiences, values that might be a little bit surprising for the reader. So the more common your topic is, the more uncommon your connections, AKA the values moments, or maybe the examples need to be in order to stand out. Okay. But for today, I want to kind of get you into the idea that maybe you could come up with something that's not a common extracurricular activity, is basically what I'm saying. All right, we're at time. Much love. I will see you all in like 2 days. Happy writing. And